Hours before its first big Canadian show, a completely different spectacle, working in concert to bring the stage from the ground up. Yeah, it's rock and roll, but it's also safety first. The concept never far from their minds, especially now.
It's going to be a very charged couple of days for us in Toronto, for everybody. As a band, we're very aware of the of what it will cost the crew being there emotionally. It's got to be very much part of those shows. We want to celebrate his life as well, and our best way of doing that is through music.
Radiohead likes to pride itself on its life-changing shows. But it was that show that never happened that's had the most profound effect on their lives. 4 p.m., June 16th, 2012, just before soundcheck. Several tons of twisted metal, lights, and video screens came crashing down and instantly killed drum technician Scott Johnson.
Have this giant screen. It's got lots of projections that come onto it.
For Radiohead drummer Philip Selway, Johnson's death weighs heavily. He was supposed to be sitting where Johnson was the moment the stage collapsed.
It's 6 years now, 6 years without answers. It's 6 years carrying that sense of wanting to do the best thing for Scott and for Scott's parents, and actually not being able to do that.
Initially, the Ministry of Labour investigated the collapse. 13 charges were laid against Live Nation, Optic Staging, and the engineer. But they were all stayed, all because the case took too long to move through the courts. So no one has been held accountable. But under the Freedom of Information Act, we've obtained an incident report prepared by the Ministry of Labour that sheds some light on what the province's engineers think went wrong that day. It turns out there was a lot. The report lists numerous design and construction issues. The overall weight of the suspended roof grid system was miscalculated. Devices used to weigh stage components were insufficient, and the construction didn't follow the design.
Those deviations cost Scott's life. And so, yes, that makes me angry. And until that's actually acknowledged in a wider sense, then that's going to happen again. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, you know, there's always a margin of error in any working practice, isn't there? But that's a lot of errors to have, and that can't and shouldn't happen again.
I think we should leave the loose. Yeah, it's close. Is this okay? No, actually,
So this is a testing facility for pressing.
At the University of Toronto, Doug Perovic uses the Downsview collapse to teach students about forensic engineering.
Stability of a large structure.
We showed him the report.
Well, this structure failed in a certain area where the truss component that held the roof up was overloaded. Simple as that.
Who should have caught that?
Well, that should have been caught firstly by the design engineer, who's responsible for making sure there are no discrepancies or significant deviations from the design drawings. And then secondly, the constructor who's building this, I mean, they also have a duty to make sure that what they're constructing is according to design drawings, and if it's not, that needs to be carefully vetted and approved, and nothing left to chance.
But a lot depends on what specifically an engineer is hired to look at in a project. In an email, Dominic Coulieri's lawyers say he was retained just to review specific components of the stage, not to review the other original components of the optic stage. They went on to say the pickup trusses installed by Optic Staging at Downsview were not designed or approved by Mr. Coulieri, and Mr. Coulieri was not informed by Optic Staging that they were not using the original pickup trusses designed for the Optic stage. not the first fatal collapse Couliari's been associated with. A cold November day in 2000, a scaffold hanging off the side of the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor gave way as workers were moving the platform.
Is he still in? As far as I know.
28-year-old Jamie Barker plunged into the river and drowned. Couliari was one of 2 engineers charged under the Occupational Health and Safety Act for allegedly giving negligent or incompetent advice. Those charges were withdrawn, and Professional Engineers of Ontario also cleared him of any allegations of misconduct. The PEO is still investigating Couliari's role in the Downsview stage collapse, while the profession waits for answers.
Is PEO doing a good enough job keeping the public safe in this instance?
I don't think so. I don't think a good enough job has been done on many sides. It's actually embarrassing for this province that tragedy like this sort of went this many years without a lesson that's yet to be learned.
But Radiohead has learned a lesson or two.
That's the whole point.
Adrian Bullock is the band's money man. Ever since the collapse, the band has dug deep to provide an extra layer of safety.
We have our own structural engineer who will check all the drawings and all the engineering piece of paper for a second opinion. We did a tour of South America a couple of months ago, so we took additional engineers with us actually on the tour to do it. I mean, it makes it an additional expense, and it's more hassle, but that you cannot put a price on safety.
The band is more cautious and also still angry. Radiohead is doing this tour without Live Nation, the world's largest live music company.
We've not done any shows in North America with them, not as a boycott per se, but we've said we can't work with you until this is resolved.
Things may never be resolved for Philip Selway. Every time he steps onto a stage, he's reminded of Scott Johnson.
As a band and as a crew, we put our trust in that machine to make sure that everything is set up in a way that we can work to our best, that the safety of all of us, of our crew and ourselves, that is paramount. Judging from what's coming out of that report, that just hasn't been honoured, that hasn't been respected, and you feel very let down about that. Let down isn't even, that doesn't cover it. So a death has come out of this. Scott has died because of this. And those kind of mistakes, they feel inexcusable.
An inquest was called in December, and while Radiohead may have finally set a date for Toronto, the coroner has yet to set a date for the inquest, which means the wait for answers continues. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Montreal.